a million paths. Un camino entre cantidades de caminos. Therefore, you must always keep in mind that a path is only a path. To have such clarity, you must lead a disciplined life. Only then will you know that any path is only a path.
I'm a warrior from the future, looking at the past, living each moment through life's hourglass. I hold on to nothing, but enjoy everything. I spiral in and out of the Milky Way sacred ring. I carry the blood of my Tata Pancho Villa, y con mi corazón, sueño noche y día. I fly with the eagles. I ride the winds of time, shoot thunderbolt arrows, aim them at your heart with a masterpiece of art. Look into your mirror, that's where it all starts. The pain of generations is deep within my soul. I burn my white sage and my abalone bowl, and I bless myself, send my prayer to the sky. I never ask why, I never complain. The way of a warrior is to always stay sane. Do away with fear so your mind stays clear. Then you deal with power, but treat her like a flower. Her poison will devour and eat up all your soul. 6 feet deep, buried in a hole. Your ego got too high and you lost control. And if you don't die from your own greed, that's when aging time starts to feed. No one can escape man's true fate. No one has the power to tell death to wait.
Both paths lead nowhere. One has a heart, the other doesn't. One makes for a joyful journey as long as you follow it. You're one with it. The other will make you curse your life. One makes you strong, the other weakens you.
Yo, LA Natives podcast. That was just a
Las Aslan. Here we are once again.
Las Aslan Natives podcast. That was just a quick little
That was Don Juan Mates.
snippet off of Zero's new project, available on Bandcamp exclusively, guys. Guys, just visit Zero 1492
Absolutely, man. Thank you for setting that
on
up,
Bandcamp.
Armando. Thank you for setting that up. You know, we're really kind of focusing on the new chapter of LA Natives, and I think the new chapter of LA Natives is, you know, pushing the merch and letting people know that we do have merchandise and music and other things. But we wanted to set a precedent, so we wanted to really kind of explain our version of life, right? And what is our perspective as natives, as indigenous, displaced natives, detribalized natives. What is that history to us? And we decided to make LA Natives, and that's why we're here. And we have a large community. I feel them, you know, I feel you guys. You know, you don't understand that whoever comes to LA Natives podcast and takes a listen, whether you're on Spotify, whether you're on YouTube, and you take your fingers and you chat with us on the chat room or whatever it's called, the feed. What is that called?
Yeah, the chat room.
Yeah, the chat room. We really, I really appreciate it.
And I'm just like you, Zero. Sometimes I don't even like listen or watch to our podcast.
I don't either.
We just shotgun through the whole episodes, and we're just blessed.
And we keep moving forward. And we keep moving. I'm not attached to the things. And we've talked to some very, very important people like Snotty Nose Red Kids. They're doing some cool things. You know, shout out to them and Dakota Bear. You know what I mean? I was just texting him 2 seconds ago. You know, shout out to Dakota Bear. Go listen to Turtle Island, Dakota Bear Carmack single. That fucking song is fire, bro. That song is a dope ass song. It's the one that we use for the promotion of Indigenous Peoples Day. And yeah, that's you know, we're working on some things here. We're working on a movement, a movement that doesn't judge you, that doesn't have to have a tribal ID, that's really based on what you implement and what you know about what history was robbed from you. You know, the point of this show is to reclaim and understand and implement our true self, which is our ancient past and our connection to being indigenous people of this planet. And that doesn't go by race. That goes by heart. That goes by action. That goes by what you are contributing to the community and the fans around you. And Armando, I love this Bandcamp thing. You know what I mean? Because I think it could be like an exclusive. This is where all the people that support LA Natives podcast and the shows and all that stuff. So I want to release a series of sweaters that I graphic designed myself. right? And then these sweaters are going to come with the NFT, and that NFT is going to have benefits. So when you buy this sweater, you're going to get an NFT with it.
Wow, that's amazing.
And that NFT, if you have it, it's only going to be a certain amount of, I think I'm only going to make 52 sweaters of one design, and then that design will never be made again. So those sweaters will start to become collectibles, and the NFTs will open doors for you. And what I mean by open doors for you is that if we do a show at Catch One and we get some VIP, guess what? All NFT people go to the VIP room.
Yep.
So we're gonna make it like that. This is one doorway that leads to another doorway, right? And we're gonna use our infinite creativity, which is what the ancestors understood as Quetzalcoatl. See, it's important for me to transition to what we're going to talk about today. Because what we're going to talk about today
was apparently what everyone's talking about.
Right.
This new movie that came out.
Right. Marvel.
Yep.
A Marvel movie. And then so before we start laying down the bricks of what this is, we're going to go, well, what is Marvel? And who owns Marvel? And how is it connected? Right? So who owns Marvel? Disney. Disney owns Marvel. So then in a way, we're saying that this movie is sponsored by Disney. Right? So here's another movie. Let me give you another movie that Disney sponsored. And it's a cult classic. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I don't like it. And it's not like I don't reference it and I don't say things from this movie. All those movies are important to us. But the violent nature that was created in those movies, what we thought was cool in those movies, were very torturous realities for people who actually had to go to prison. So, you know who sponsored Blood In, Blood Out?
Disney?
Disney.
Wow.
Disney.
That's a cult classic right there.
Blood In, Blood Out, right? Like we used to go, oh, damn, there's the Pino and hey, what's up, and mimic it, right? And like, and then we said, well, if we went to jail, it wouldn't be that scary, right? We could survive it. It's like this movie, right? So it's all starting to implode on individuals that created this multimedia juggernaut that we call the mainstream, right?
You know, I used to be a hardcore comic book kid and teenager. I used to, beg my parents to pay for the number ones and the number twos and the collectors and shit like that. You know, all you comic book heads, you guys know what I'm talking about. Where like if you have the number one issue, it's like the most expensive issue.
Right. I was more into like the animated series stuff.
No, like
I know what you're talking about.
No, I was into buying comics and keeping them 100% so mint. I could resell them.
Yeah, mint. Yeah,
and I would always seek out the best. I would even open them, but there was a whole cult of people doing that because there was a lot of money to be made in those days.
Well, I mean, collectibles will always, be valuable, and those Marvel movies. There's a reason why they have Marvel Studios now.
I don't think when Marvel was created or when Stan Lee was creating these amazing characters, I don't think he would have ever imagined that it would have been in movies. See, that's the thing. See, now when Hollywood takes control, they throw their spices on it.
Wow.
Right?
There's always an agenda when it comes to anything that's going to be to the masses.
Because in comic books, it was strictly about the fantasy land and the story.
And you had to be able to read very well and not, it's kind of like an antiquated cartoon, right?
Yeah.
Comic books are like
you paint the movie in your head.
Yeah, like you see the colored pictures and the expression on the people's faces, and you're reading the dialogue, and you're kind of creating this image in your head like a cartoon. So it's kind of like the old version of a cartoon. That's what a comic book is. And it does open your fantasy land and all that stuff. So, so now we know that comic books are in the realm of fiction.
Absolute fiction.
Fiction. So their stories made up. They could do a mixture of cultures and like certain things and go, oh wow, but this is what this represents here. And who's hurting anybody? We're not hurting anybody. It's just a movie, right? It's just a movie. It doesn't affect anybody. But if movies don't affect anybody, then why did Steven Spielberg make Schindler's List? Right? Like Schindler's List really affected people. Even like they went, oh my God, the Holocaust was horrible. And it wouldn't have been, people wouldn't have really cared about it. But a movie does that. A movie can go, oh, look, let's move their emotions and go, look, this is what really happened. And when it's just a rendition.
I would love a movie of the indigenous perspective and the history that indigenous people we all had to go through.
It's coming. It's going to come.
Because if it was just as deep as Schindler's List, think about it.
Yeah.
Well,
because people understand the story of indigenous people and the detribalization of everyone here, right? Some people are so lost, they're calling themselves a language, which is Latino, right? And then we cling to the colonial, which is Mexican. And the indigenous name is so far gone in history that we can't. So then what do you do at that point? Do you cling to mainstream companies telling you your own history? Going, no, don't worry, don't read that book, or don't, and not necessarily go, just don't go do the research. And the research requires reading, right? I'm not saying that I'm not into reading. I just don't make what I read fact. I determine fact through me, through my own heart, through my own putting the pieces together. Because it's not just one documentary that's going to put all this knowledge into you. It's not one ceremony that cures you. It's the practice of our indigenous ways.
And this is why I think this episode is very important, because now there's a Marvel movie out that's very, very,
and they hit
it's
us
going
hard.
viral.
Hit us hard.
And ultimately, who are these movies targeting?
Our people.
No, children.
And children,
and
yes.
Our children.
Our children, because we are the biggest population. We are the biggest population on the West Coast, on, all the way to the middle, like, even like Nevada, Texas. All these places have large amounts of detribalized natives, right? And so why wouldn't they go for the juggernaut, right? Why wouldn't they go for the most revered understanding through native culture, which is Quetzalcoatl, right? And let's make our version of Quetzalcoatl, right? They didn't use that word Quetzalcoatl. They used Kukulkan, right? And Kukulkan is the energy of the wind, the feathered serpent, the Venus star.
And this is coming from someone that actually watched the movie, right? You actually watched it.
Yeah,
it's not like you're talking about this movie and didn't watch it.
No, I watched it. I went to go see it. My partner said that I should have, that I had to go see it. That this was important, to see. And my son, my son goes to Anahuacalmeca, which is an indigenous charter school in Los Angeles. Shout out to Anahuacalmeca and Marcos and all the work that he does there, and Tata Kwashli, who started that school. But they got advance tickets to go see this movie. Yeah,
it's a big deal, right?
Yeah, bro. It's like they want to make sure that everybody knows the story of Quetzalcoatl. Marvel's taking the responsibility to educate the masses on who Quetzalcoatl was, right?
No, I'm just laughing because it's so bizarre to me.
I mean, it to me, it
just be real. But much respect to Marvel in the movie. I give it nothing but love,
Right. Well, I mean, I there was a thing that I was watching on social media, And this African lady said, I would never watch Black Panther. I would never watch it. She's all, I'm not into historical fiction. I'm not into a made up story by white executives in Hollywood mixing Greek culture and all these other things to create their mutated version of a discipline. See, Quetzalcoatl wasn't a man. From all the maestros that I talked to, it was a discipline. If you did certain things, if you had certain perspectives, you were considered of this understanding and discipline. That means you followed and understood the Aztec Tonalmachillo. You understood the sciences and math and frequency and had a sacred diet. See, Quetzalcoatl was connected to the wind. Yet, why did Marvel use the water? Quetzalcoatl came from the water? Tlalocan, right? Tlaloc, the water energy, right? But he flies? See, that's what I mean. They're like giving you a scrambled egg version of a discipline. Quetzalcoatl brought different ideas to a community that maybe weren't following certain things. You know, let's just, we were very ritualistic. We didn't live in utopia. Sometimes we did bad things because that's what humans do, and they learn from those mistakes. I think people get the wrong idea about indigenous people being these holier than thou monks, but there are people who learn a discipline. And those people, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, my theory, I have to really kind of lay down some sort of a documentation. And I wish I would have had one of my maestros here, like Masatzin or Kamapishli or Osolocoat, and they could really break it down. And that will be in the future. But right now we have to say something. We can't be lost in the hype of how dope this character looks and how strong he was, and he's the enemy in the fucking, he's the enemy. He's the enemy in the fucking movie.
I don't know how.
Right? And they call him Namor. Namor.
Right.
Right? They don't even call him Kukulkan. They mention that his name is Kukulkan, but they didn't want to keep calling him Kukulkan. They didn't want to keep doing that. They had to call him something different. Namor.
Which is something you told me off air. Like,
we'll bring that up too. But let's massage the audience here, because we're talking about a rendition of Mexican culture, and sometimes in the mass media, we get excited with it. We get happy about it. We get like, wow.
And there's a lot of people I already know in the chat, and people who are going to listen to us on Spotify. They're going to be like, "Look, guys, it's a Disney movie. You know, you guys can't take it that serious." But I think it's very serious because it's symbolism ultimately at the end of the day that you're pushing into these kids' heads.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. We can't go and put our children in front of things and let them be a 7-year-old kid and distort the imagination of what that symbol meant. Quetzalcoatl is infinite imagination, creativity, discipline, wisdom. These are things that a human can possess and tap into through understanding their blood. Not bloodline, but blood, their connection with everything that they are. humbly accepting this burden of wisdom, right? It isn't violent. Quetzalcoatl would be opposite of that. He wouldn't be in a vengeful Romanesque display, which is what this Wakanda thing is like.
Right. And I don't know. I haven't watched the film, and now I'm gonna watch it and give him my money. It is what it is. I just hate
Go on the 2 for 1 night or the half price.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait for it to go to the Regent Theater, right? Or
the
Regal theaters.
There you go.
But look, just recently, all the headlines from the mainstream outlets are saying it was a villain debuting a Mexican, first time ever Mexican superhero or Marvel character. He's a villain.
Right.
And then I'm reading all the feedback, and I'm just like, yo, a lot of people don't agree with that. I don't think the movie actually pushed him as a villain. Or was he acting as a villain? Is this character a villain? You've seen the movie.
Yeah, I seen the movie. And okay, so he became a villain. I'm going to explain the scene of when he became a villain. And I want people to use critical thinking while I do this explanation in the movie, right? And I want you to see the psychological shift of hands or switch of hands, right, in the movie. So there's a scene where he's explaining that his mom died, right? And or let me go back a little bit. They take this or I guess the Spaniards came and they drink it, and then that drink makes them able to absorb oxygen in the water, right? And so they go into an underwater city called Tlalocan, right? And so Quetzalcoatl was the first one to be born in water, in the water world. And so he goes into the city, and eventually his mom gets older, dies, but requests to be buried on land. And so he goes as a teenager. He looks like in the scene, he's like a teenager. And he goes to this plantation looking place. It looks like a plantation, and they have a bunch of natives tied up to each other, and they're whipping them. And it's like Spaniards, right? Spaniards and priests that are whipping the natives and mistreating the natives. And he's all, these people abused my people and blah, blah, blah. And so this little kid doesn't know how to handle the emotion, and he's right? And he starts destroying the plantation. And the priest, he starts, I guess, maybe killing everyone. And then there's a scene where the priest holds his hand up and he goes, "Sin amor, you're a demon. Without love, sin amor." And he's all, "My name is Namor now." And so that's how he got his name to be. So they made him a villain because he came back and saw his people being raped. The land no longer belonged to them, and they were being enslaved. And so he wants to defend them, and the priest calls them Sinamor, and he remembered it as Namor. And we're going to get somebody on who also saw the movie. Telling me about it before I didn't. Marvel was doing a movie about Quetzalcoatl or involving Quetzalcoatl. There's a few points though in this movie, and I want to see if the person that we're going to get on pretty soon, we're going to invite Heron, because Heron told me about this movie, and I was going to hear about it anyways, but he told me about how it was going to be based on the character of Quetzalcoatl, right? And so there's a few things that we have to keep clear, though. Remember that Quetzalcoatl is associated with the wind, Ehecat, hence the flying serpent.
Sorry about that, guys. I think the video went out. There was a random update live on air. I hate when these cameras or
But they could hear
software.
Talking, no? They could hear us talking.
Yeah, I think they can hear us now. I think we're good.
Oh, they couldn't hear us before?
Let me see. Check 1 2. I think you guys could hear us. Yes, I think we're good.
All right.
I really want to watch this film now. You know,
It's an interesting. They're taking little. They're cherry picking. They're cherry picking on what that is and what the symbolism of what that is. And I just found it very, very interesting that it was a pre-Columbian culture fighting a Wakandan African culture, right? And according to Europeans, we never crossed oceans and met or had anything to do with each other, right?
Yep.
And the point of
shout out to Heron, by the way.
Yeah, shout out Heron. And we'll get deeper into what his perspective is, because we just have to be very clear about what we take as truth. And we know that it's a movie, but we can't let things get mixed up. And then they do the switch of hands and go, look, you're the evil guy, right? You're the evil guy, not me. Right? That's what the priest did when Quetzalcoatl went to the plantation and saw his people being mistreated. He defended them, and then the priest calls him the evil guy. You're the evil guy. It doesn't make it's the switcheroo. It's the narcissistic switcheroo. We have to come to a place where we really put some time into researching what these symbols are and what they represent, right? Quetzalcoatl is infinite creativity.
And something you mentioned earlier, that he wouldn't be violent. Like, a villain is a violent person.
Yeah, if you're bringing new ideas to communities, you're not going to bring it with violence. You're going to bring it with an alternative to violence. And what would be an alternative to violence is endurance, a better diet. Diet has a lot to do with our perspective. And so these individuals who carried the title of Quetzalcoatl, I wouldn't even go, I'm not a historian on this pack, but I just know for a fact that he did not live in water, and he's associated to the wind, not the water. So I may be wrong. And if I am, I'll be the first to say, you know what, I'm sorry, and I didn't have enough in-depth thing, but I'm pretty sure that, another thing I felt that was weird is that, I'm scrolling social media and I see this white dude, right? This white dude, he's like in charge of, looks like he's from Sweden or some shit. Like he had like a heavy accent, a heavy English accent, but he might be American, but and I hate when movies do that. I hate when they hire this person who may be a really cool energy and really cool dude to go out and meet with indigenous people, have them play instruments, and then he gets to score all these instruments in his own way and say, "Oh, it was wonderful working with them." Instead of Marvel going, "Fuck, hey guys, what are your ideas for this scene right here?" Like the people that actually make the music. No, you got to send this buffer dude in there, this individual that is going to just take elements of it and create his own score and then go, "Oh, wow, look at how I used their instruments. I needed my touch." Like, it's just, to me, it's not genuine, and if you have hundreds of millions of dollars and you're hiring just one Caucasian dude to go do the research, I mean, shout out to whoever benefited from that, because I'm sure that there was some indigenous communities that got a little bit of money for that. And I'm not hating on their success or any of that. But I think in time, hopefully in the next 52 years, that we'll step up and tell our own story. we'll step up and create our own version of who our own symbols of wisdom and change and knowledge, what they truly represent in a creative way. We can't just let other cultures or other races, and this is not a race thing. This is more about informational, factual things, that we use the right things so that the energies don't get lost in translation. You know, it seems harmless for someone to make a movie and include Quetzalcoatl in it, but to make him a violent individual trying to get revenge, or I don't know what his motive was. Namor, aka Quetzalcoatl. Like what it just didn't really make sense. It was like that homie from Black Panther died, and then Marvel said, well, we fucking need a Black Panther too, so let's fucking make this omelet of history and put some large studio budget money into it and pass it off as, a, an inclusive rendition of history. And it was completely not that. So don't get caught up in that. Don't get caught up in the false narrative of what they're trying to say you are. Take ownership of it. Watch the movie if you feel like you want to watch it, and have your own judgment on it. That's what I'm doing today. I just felt like I really needed to talk about it because Namor is something you should talk about.
And you caught a few things that the quote unquote propaganda is trying to just squeeze in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's confusing to have the story revolve around a Mesoamerican culture and an African culture, right? It's why are Africa and Mexico or the ancient lands of the Mayab, I think, in the original name. Why are they fighting each other? That was confusing. Like, why? How? You know what I mean? Like, why are they opposing each other? And there was one thing that I've been studying recently about how we automatically just go to 1492 as if history started in 1492. And it didn't start in 1492. What about 1100? What about 1200? 1300? And then you get to 1492. Where in 1492, all of a sudden we have thousands and thousands of ways of telling the story of 1492. But for 300 years prior to that, that's a big void. That's a big void. 300 years is a big void. And you got to remember that military invasions don't write down history. They just invade, conquer, and claim as their own. And by talking to the Moors, I have a few individuals, and I follow a few pages. It sounds like they were here before the Spaniard. It seems like the Moors were here in the early 1300s, right? Because there's documented records of George Washington and the Moors having, beef, or at least some sort of interaction. So then, now let's go back to the Marvel movie. And you have a Mesoamerican character telling an African character Your son is responsible for them finding us. So that tells me, because they have to tell the truth, but you have to be able to catch it, because they're not going to tell you in plain sight. It's kind of like a dude playing, that card game where he's all, which card is it? What card is it? It's there. The card's there, but 3-card Monty or whatever. In other words, they don't have to be telling you what card to flip. They don't have to baby food feed you. So he turns to the queen and he's all, your son is responsible for them knowing about us. I thought that was an interesting point.
That is a very interesting point.
Like something you should really, really deep, really, really research, like the black nobility, research how long, there's a brother I recently found out about, John, I think his name is John Levy or John Levi. And he's been doing research about like certain structures in certain cities and certain places that seem to be very, very old, far older than the Europeans coming here. And so if that's the case, and Europeans are so violently brutal, what's to say that they didn't go into cities and just wipe them out and claim the architecture and claim the knowledge and claim all that stuff? That's interesting to me. And this movie kind of, if you're really critical, you would see it, right? I'm not sure if people understood that, but that's just my thing. My thing is that I don't want to believe propaganda anymore. I don't want to just go, oh yeah, that guy went to college and he knows his shit about the history of who was here. Because let's face it, the Smithsonian and all those museums have hundreds and hundreds of hidden artifacts that explain a different story of Turtle Island and the people that originate from there, which is us. They had a war on all the people of color who were living in a certain frequency, one that was reliant on nature and the observation of nature. And Europeans didn't have that perspective. When they went on the Crusades, and those Inquisitions, the Inquisition was that anyone who was of non-European descent and did not follow the way of the Catholic Church was free game, lesser than. So then you can rape them, you can kill them, you can steal their children, and you can take their land. When someone tells you a story of someone doing that to you, what do you think the story after that's going to be? It's not going to be the truth. They're going to make up whatever they want and shove it down your throat and make you believe it. We have a true history. And don't let people distort our symbols. Our symbols mean they're the key to 100 years from now. We're free. True freedom. The freedom of our own creativity, of our own innovation, and the reclaiming of our own spirituality. That was the prophecy of our great ancestors. And they know that. They know that we were going to come back to who we were. And if we did, we would be the biggest community on Turtle Island. So why wouldn't they go after the most revered idol of Mesoamerica? The Olmecs knew about Quetzalcoatl. The Toltecs knew about Quetzalcoatl. The Mayas knew about Quetzalcoatl. And so did the Mexica.
And we got Heron in the building.
Yo.
Yo, Heron.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you able to watch the film yet?
Was I able to what?
Have you watched the film yet?
Yes, I have.
So what'd you think, bro? Have you heard what I've been talking about?
Yes, I have. I'm having trouble with my sound because I could barely hear you. So let me get off the Bluetooth and maybe that's gonna help.
Okay, sounds good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Can you hear us?
Okay, yeah. So I want to speak from a different perspective. I have been listening to the whole live, and I understand the point you're coming from, but I also want to provide a different perspective because I have been following the franchise since part one. I'm a big Marvel fan. I grew up with X-Men and Marvel and the ideology that we can always look at some type of, even if it's fictional, we could look at some heroes to see what's right from wrong. And even the mutants were treated unfairly just because they were different. So I, as a young immigrant, I related to that and I resonated to that. So to me, I did resonate to that, and Namor being in the comic books, the first mutant dating back to 1939, and when Marvel wasn't even Marvel yet. And he was the third overall character from Marvel. So there's a deep history with him. But all that got changed for this film. And so then I want to talk about that and the importance of that. So now we're talking about the Noche Huerta. The Noche Huerta, I've been following him for about 2 years when he had only about 100,000 followers. And he used to repost me when I used to post things about what he's fighting for, which is Poder Prieto. Poder Prieto is a movement in Mexico that's pretty much equivalent to the decolonizing movement that we have going on here. But it also includes Afro-Mexicanos because of their dark skin. So Poder Prieto translates to dark power. So think of Chicano power, indigenous power, and black power all in one. And so he has been very outspoken about the racism, the colorism, the classism of Mexico in colonization. After he was given the role of Caro Quintero in Narcos Mexico, he became more outspoken because he realized he had a bigger platform. And they completely took him out of season 2. They didn't even say why. They didn't show in the season what happened to him. They just completely erased him because he was being too outspoken. So Mexico had a whole campaign against him. We're gonna do our best to silence this guy. This guy can no longer go on TV talking about the racism and the colorism that exists in Mexico. So when Marvel approached him, and to be more direct, it wasn't Marvel. It was the director Coogler. When he approached him and offered him this movie, word got out. And this is right before the pandemic happened. So then the Whitexicans, which is a code word for the white Latinos or white Mexicans, those with strong Spaniard blood, strong white skin, but also the mentality of blanquitud, which is, thinking like a white person. They created this campaign to demand Marvel to cancel him, to not have him in their movie. And regardless of the outrage that they were going about him being a racist, him being even homophobic, all this crazy stuff, Ryan Coogler fought for him and said, no, this is my guy. This is the guy I want, because he's literally what Namor is in real life. He fights for his people under any means necessary. And that's who Tenoch Huerta is. He's fighting for his people, which is the darker toned people. in Mexico. I relate to that because I grew up with that stigma. So I've been following this for a whole 2 years or whatever it's been. And the importance I see in him getting this role and the importance I see him playing this role is that it provides, in this capitalist world, it provides him with the capital, with the platform where he can continue spreading his message as he has been doing. He hasn't silenced himself. Marvel hasn't silenced him. Disney hasn't silenced him. The movie hasn't silenced him. If you look at all his interviews, he continues to speak about the colorism, the colonization, the classism in Mexico, Latino America, and even here in the United States. But he does say that rather than his country giving him an opportunity to shine, it was the United States who reached out to him. So he is grateful for that. But it would have never happened if it wasn't for all of our people from Latino America who have sacrificed their own lands and their own attachment to their own culture and come over here to look for a better life, which has now created the opportunity for him to shine.
That's a great perspective, right, Zero?
Yeah.
I also want to.
But see, that's not what I've gotten out of his interviews. I never heard him say anything that was. But I don't go deep into researching him. I really didn't know him as an actor, and I never considered him an activist, right, or someone that.
Oh, he's a huge activist.
Obviously, I'm learning that right now as we speak. But
yeah, and it's okay.
To me though, it's like we sensationalize a lot of things and settle for, like, let's take the example that Tenoch Huerta is not an actor but a basketball player, right? And he goes to the NBA and he happens to go to a Mexican or detribalized community such as Houston or Los Angeles or a big population of detribalized natives. Like, we'd be the same thing. We'd be very forgiving and proud. Wow, we're so happy that finally there's a Mexican or a detribalized native in the NBA. But we never get anything out of that. What do we get out of that? What do we get out of going, oh, wow, that guy's really saying some things? And it's okay that he took a scrambled egg version of a very important symbol in our cultural history. That symbol is mathematics, bro. That symbol is associated with geometry. It's not a man. And it's definitely not an enemy called Namor.
Oh, so I want to touch on some of those points that you made. I want to, if I may, correct them.
And everyone, guys, before we go, remember the name. Remember the name.
Yeah, remember Namor.
So Namor, which is his Spanish name, Namor, because he's El Niño Sin Amor, which is another thing that, for those kids that grew up without love in our broken homes, that many of us do suffer in, that's another way to resonate with him, So Namor, he's not a villain. He's not a bad guy. He's classified as an anti-hero. So an anti-hero is just a hero that's a hero to his people only. Also, an anti-hero is a hero who does kill, because most heroes, like Superman and Batman, they won't kill. They'll let their enemies keep living and keep doing wrong, no matter how many times they've done wrong. They hope that they're gonna get better and hopefully this romantic ending. So an anti-hero says, no, that's my enemy. He needs destruction. I need to stop this. He's a threat to my people. That's an anti-hero. So he's a hero to his people, but he's not a hero to the colonizers. That's why he's considered, with this villain look and this bad guy look. He's not a bad guy to us. He's a bad guy to them. Now, here's where it resonates with the original Namor character and where the new Mesoamerican character are a little bit different. So the original Namor character, it doesn't say what race he is, but this guy hated imperialists. So his mom was a Atlantic person, and then his dad was a white colonizer or white imperialist. and he like banged his mom, knocked her up, and then left. So he grew up hating his dad and everybody that looked like him. So his famous phrase was Imperial Rex when he was about to go ham on anybody. And so this guy hated the surface world, but mostly imperialists and colonizers. Now that's where they attached the idea to like, oh, wouldn't it be great if he was from Mesoamerica? And more of a reason to hate colonizers and to hate imperialists if he comes from a group of people, marginalized people who have been for 500 years been oppressed by them, right? So it connected great. Also, the reason they went with a different culture was because Ryan Coogler had the idea that he's like, hey, so this I learned from an interview recently. He said he grew up in Oakland, and the other ethnicity that he grew up with were Chicanos. And he's like, most of them are from Mesoamerica region. Most of them are either indigenous people or reconnecting indigenous people. He's like, I even have indigenous region or indigenous rooted people in my family. So he comes from a mixed family. So that's why he thought of changing the culture. Also, market-wise, it works because there's already Aquaman out there, which has almost the same story, because Aquaman in the comic books is a ripoff from Namor. He came later. So it was good to like change the perspective. This idea had been pitched to Chadwick while he was still living. He says that he was amazed with the idea and he was really happy to work with Mesoamerican people, that would be great to bring both cultures together because we're so similar to one another. In the comic book, Namor and Black Panther are kind of enemies, and they've gone at it a few times, and then they become friends, and then they go at it again. So they're kind of frenemies. They're sometimes friends, sometimes not. So that's already in the comic book. So they kept some of the comic book stuff, but with a new twist. So them going to war is nothing new. That's just part of the comic books. But where they become friends or allies, in the future, that's also not comic books, but it's also I think, a bigger symbolism that yes, we may, like brother and sister, we may fight each other in family, but if we realize who our bigger enemy is, it is within our best interest to work our shit out and come together because we have a bigger enemy. And I think that's the message of the movie. I won't give any spoilers away because I know a lot of people still haven't watched it, but I would support the movie. And here's another reason why. The soundtrack, look up the soundtrack. They literally went to Yucatan, and I know you kind of mentioned about this white guy taking credit. If you watch his interviews, he actually says he went and studied as much as he could. He talked to all the regional people. And yes, I agree with you. They should have just hired a regional person from the get-go. But he did go put in money into these people's pockets. He did go support one of the only rapping crew of Maya, Yucatan Maya language. Mm-hmm. If you listen to the soundtrack, they actually have some beautiful songs in there with Spanish Mexican region rappers, even corrido, and Yucatan Mayan language, and some females from the region. So it's putting money and exposure into people who would have never have had that exposure, including the actress Namor. She's like a no-name, nobody, and now she's like one of the biggest stars right now, right? Atuma as well. He's another indigenous actor that would have never had this opportunity. He still only has like a few thousand followers because he's literally a no-name. So Tenoch Huerta is the only name that's recognized of people who know him. But again, he's very hated by the establishment. He's hated by all the media in Mexico. You could just look him up on YouTube and you'll see why. He has his own channel. It's called Versión Extendida, which means extended version of what he talks about, his version. He's part of a group called Poder Prieto, and you could look him up on all social medias and learn about his fight. And I don't know if you're familiar with the latest claims or dispute that John Leguizamo has going on with Hollywood. Are you familiar with that fight?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
So that I keep pushing, Tenoch Huerta on John Leguizamo's talk, because John Leguizamo has a good point where Hollywood has always oppressed the Latino image or the Latino representation when we're like 30-something% of the market, but we don't see 30-something% of representation in casting, production, direction, anything to do with Hollywood, right? So where's the equivalent in representation when it comes to capital? it's not there. The problem I have with him is that he's talking from a white Anglo vision, even within Latino representation, because he's not aware that even if they do give into more Latino representation, it's going to be white Latinos. And this is where I think the Noche is very well versed in how to explain that for a long time, Latino America looks like a Caucasian region when it's only about 20 or less percent of white Latinos in population as demographics go. The majority are indigenous people. Second to that are actually Afro Latinos, because a large portion of the Atlantic trade of slaves went towards Latino America, but they have also been erased by white media. So it's almost like what Kanye is, saying that Hollywood is run by Jews. Latino America is run by white Latinos. It's the same thing, the same argument.
Well,
if John Lozano was to join
nothing changed from, like, we seem to live in a fantasy land where we felt like, oh, okay, well, we read the history of the colonized oppression of Mexico, and now it's over. It's not over. It's the same thing. It's the same people in power. It's the same thing. They just wrote the books to kind of make it look like it's over, but we still treat you the same, and there's different tactics, but that's it. I don't know. I don't want to, like, be a bummer. I love what people do with their platforms, and I'm not too familiar with what his movement is. I'm talking about the Marvel movie and how distorted the version of Quetzalcoatl is.
Now,
here's the thing that I had a problem with that Disney always does. In The Lion King, there's a scene where I forget the fucking Simba, where Simba sees his father die. Imagine a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 20-year-old put himself in that position.
You're speaking of psychological, emotional effect, right?
Hold on. Relax. I'll give you your time. Believe me, I will. It's that Disney always has to, in Bambi, one of the first 10 minutes of the movie, there's a scene where there's a hunter and he shoots Bambi's mom. Disney repeatedly uses the dying of a parent. Repeatedly uses it, and this is another case, right? Because, his mom died, and there's a young kid burying his mom. Come on, dude. What 15-year-old goes and has that responsibility of creating a funeral for your mom? That's a traumatic scene implanted. So that's another thing that I didn't like about it. Our people were very composed people. We did not regret death. If you lived whatever years you lived, I'm sure we were cool with that. We're not a people that are new to death. We observed for a very long time. And here's another point in that movie. And remember, I was talking to you about, I don't know if you heard Heron, I was talking about like how, we have a big missing piece of our history in terms of the 1100s to the 1492. And so if there was other people responsible for Europeans knowing that we were over here in this land, right? And then in the movie, they kind of scratched the surface of things like that, right? And there's a scene where, I don't know if you remember the scene, Heron, where the person's I'm going to just do this, that. I think it's the sister, right? The Chadwick's sister. I'm going to get him, I'm going to beat him up, or I'm going to kill him, or whatever. And the person in the scene goes, he's older than you. He's older than you.
Yeah.
You can't beat him. He's older than you. That's another reference to our culture being older. You got to use critical thinking.
Well, she actually, there's a scene where she
you got to
tells
use critical
them,
thinking.
So you're like,
you got to use critical thinking.
You're like 500 years old. She actually asked. I don't know if you remember.
Huh?
There's a scene where she asked. She kind of asked, "Are you 500 years old?"
I don't know. I don't remember that scene. I don't remember that scene.
There's a part in the movie where he's telling her about his mom, and then she goes, "So you've been alive since then? So you're about 500 years old?" So I get what you're saying. I can't speak on the Moors because I've heard some crazy stuff from them. So to me, a lot of them are the same as the Israelite Hebrews, who are filled with all kinds of pseudo history stuff. So unless I see some concrete evidence of Moors actually having a whereabouts of our land, I can't take that serious. But I also can't take the history that the colonizers has given us.
I don't know. I don't know if I understand what you're saying, but
I just don't know the reference.
Like, are you saying that Europeans are the only ones that came over here? Is that what you're saying? That you're clinging to the sense that Europeans were the only ones? That's all I'm pointing out. I'm pointing out.
No, I just. I'm
pointing out head on in that statement that the Americas was a vast amount of land with large amounts of people that were not ruled by the perspectives of Europeans, where this land is mine and you better stay off of it, and I'm gonna fucking oppress you, and I'm gonna steal your kids and indoctrinate them into lies. That statement comes from that. But why would you need to see it in a book? Use your heart and your wisdom. Use your heart and your wisdom and put together the pieces of the puzzle, because there's a lot of things and just know that we're dealing with the greatest liar of all time. I mean, this brother and sister lie. They fucking lie. They're the masters of lying.
I also acknowledge that. So, yeah, I'm not saying I need to see it in a book, but I would rather see some archaeological evidence. But back to the movie.
But archaeological evidence is going to be given to you by somebody who has a PhD, right? Coming from an institution that was implemented by wealthy individuals like Rockefeller, Carnegie, Dow, DuPont. Like archaeology, go there yourself. You make the conclusion. You're the one vested in it deeper. And I'm talking in general to LA Natives podcast. You don't have to have no fucking PhD or read any books. I went to Teotihuacan myself. I went to Chichen Itza myself. I went to these places myself with the mentality of an archaeologist. Like I wouldn't dismiss it like that. Like don't let a white man tell you, hey, this is.
Well, I've been to Chichen Itza. I've been to Tulum. I've been to Cobá. And I've been to 3 archaeological sites.
Then make your own conclusions. Yeah, make your own conclusions.
My conclusion is that all I see is indigenous history. All I see is indigenous people. I don't see no African influence whatsoever. But that's my perspective.
No, but like it's like you can't think of it like African influence coming. Like if I was a Maya and I went to Africa and I went to go visit, or I spent 20 years of my life to get there and 10 years of my life to get back, or 5 years of my life to get back. It was an experience. It was a trade. It was a teaching. It was something that I experienced. Don't think that the white man was the only one that could travel. That's what everybody says. The white man's the only one that could the Vikings were the ones that came. And then the Europeans are the ones that came. And then the Portugal and the French and like, come on, bro. Like,
you're right about that.
Let's put this in perspective. Let's put this in perspective, though, head on. If you could build a fucking pyramid, you can't build a boat. You can't calculate currents in the ocean. You're a master of geometry. Both sides.
For sure. So
both sides.
I'll say
all sides.
I'll say this. I've been in circles recently with elders who have brought this up, right? And they said, we didn't come from the other side of the world. None of our elder stories talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But there has been migration, but not from them to us. It's actually been the other way around, from us to them.
Makes sense.
We migrated over there, and we influenced some of the things that happened over there on the Eastern Hemisphere. So this is the old world, not the new world.
Exactly.
So I've been in circles with elders that have spoken of that. So
that's what I'm saying. But don't think though for 1 minute that because we're calling it the old world doesn't mean that other races weren't here. It was an advanced world of knowledge. It was the end of an age that was going to go through a 500-year dark period. It wasn't just us that went through the dark period. Other people went through the dark period too. It was a global thing. There is no origin story. That story is too big and too long. And that's why we can't reference movies to be uplifting unless they give you the true symbolism of what they're using. They're cherry picking, in my opinion, and giving truth under the table so that you don't realize and don't see and don't do the studies. You know what I mean? That's my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that I like to put my belief towards the Hopi prophecy and the Hopi teachings that there are 4 big nations in the world, and Creator gave each nation an element to be a caretaker of, and so each nation represented by the medicine wheel and the colors of the medicine wheel, and we were the Earth people, the Earth nation, and we are the Red nation, and we were given the element of Earth, the whole Western Hemisphere. And then it was the white people given the element of fire. It was the Black nation given the element of water, and the Yellow nation given the element of wind. But we all come from our different 4 corners of the world. So if we come from the 4 corners of the world, that means that all the Western Hemisphere was all brown, red nation, all brown people of red nation. There was no whites here, there was no blacks here, and there was no Asians here.
Really, you honestly, I don't know if I subscribe to that, because that's kind of absolute kind of wisdom. Like, it's kind of like saying, like, we went through every square inch of the rainforest when we know we don't have the provisions or the knowledge or the ability to live in the rainforest. Yet we go, oh, but we know the rainforest. We understand the rainforest. We don't understand anything. And that's the point of our culture is that it never lived in these absolutes. Like, we can't understand that we were not segregated. We were not segregated. We didn't have a segregated mentality. Racism didn't even exist. They didn't have that. Your mic didn't go on.
Racism didn't even exist.
I didn't see no evidence of it. I think people disagreed, but they didn't go, oh, this fucking guy looks less darker than me. If you really study the doctrine of discovery, you'll understand that that was the racist document upon which they said, you are this, and you are that, and you come from here, and you come from there. That's what I'm trying to kind of challenge. Is that I can't take the history written by them.
Well, I can agree with certain points, right? So, we were not segregated. As the Red Nation, we were not, and we're not a monolith either. So we have different skin tones based on how close we are to the equator and how further away we are from the equator. So those closer to the equator are going to be of darker skin, like the Maya, the Inca. And those further away, like Lakota, or any other northern tribe, the Cree, they're going to be of lighter skin, and they're going to be actually taller too. So we didn't look at each other different by these races or racial profiles of darker and lighter tones. Yes, you're correct. That came with colonization. But because of colonization, we have been indoctrinated and perverted with ideas of self-hate within our people in Latino America. And that's what we're living with today. Now, I also think that we were not globally segregated if the Hopi knew, and many other nations knew, that there was 4 nations in the world. If they knew there was a white nation, a black nation, and a yellow nation, and they looked different and closer to those colors or skin tones, then they knew of them, or they knew of their existence at somehow before Columbus, right?
Absolutely.
So how did they know? I don't know. That I don't know. But they knew of their existence. Even the Lakota have a prophecy where they speak that something was going to happen, and they were going to go under 500 years of this dark period. And so they prepared with good healing medicine on how they would have to heal during this time of resistance. So they knew it was coming. So a lot of the prophecies that I've been learning, they knew. I just don't know. I don't see that we were all living together already here before colonization. I don't
that's
see
not
that.
what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying either. I'm not saying that there was. I'm saying that people can travel.
Yeah.
Small groups,
okay.
Big groups, but not like we're not the Romans, bro. We're not the Romans. We weren't gonna come with a wave of armies. Like African people, if they came to the Americas prior to the Europeans, they weren't gonna come in like droves and millions of people. Like I don't know, but there are some fucking old buildings. Have you heard of John Levi?
No, I have not.
Look him up, John Levi. Look him up, because I think there's some buildings that are dating back to like 1200, and they're very big and they're sophisticated, and there's different types of technology to them. You got to also research world fairs. World fairs are where people used to bring those technological, I'm talking about like 1400s, 1300s, you know. World fairs existed in these places where technology would come together, and they would display, and they would share. We are a sharing people, culture, but there was a period. There was a period in history where religion took over, and it took over the whole entire globe, and it killed a lot of people. And we still live under that kind of understanding. That erased a lot of history and left someone else to dictate the narrative, who happens to be of European descent. That's what we're saying. We're not saying that millions and millions of Africans lived here. No, but what would you say if 100 of them lived here? 1,000 of them lived here? Right? Like, that's what I'm talking about.
I just don't know if there's enough. And I know you said, these archaeologists are going to be white. Most of the time they are, but I think that's the importance of our people also becoming archaeologists. For example, there was a tribe in, I think, Washington. They found these old bones, and these white archaeologists wanted to make their own claims to them, that they were of European descent, or they were of, Scandinavian descent or somewhere. And so the nation of that area said, we are a sovereign nation. We demand that those bones are given to us, and we will prove to you that those are our ancestors. And so the white archaeologists fought like, nope. And finally, there was one white archaeologist who said, okay, you know what? They have a point. Why don't we give them a try and see if they can prove it? And so they did. And then they did prove that.
Can we pause right there? Listen to what you just said, though. Listen to what you just said. And this is the basis of what I'm saying, is that they're laying claim to these bones, right? Am I on the right track?
Yeah.
And then they go, wow, you know what? Let's give them a shot. Let's let them do it. Why not? That still shows white supremacist power over challenging a person that's challenging the narrative.
Yeah.
Now, these people are very smart, bro. There's reasons why there's lodges, and when you go see a documentary, I'm sure they're in cahoots. One person just needs to say one thing. Like, I was recently watching this documentary on the Anasazi, and they were saying that they were cannibals, and that one guy just wouldn't give it up, that they were cannibals and they were cannibals. Look, this has pot marks. And so they show this other scene of another doctor going, "Yup, those are pot marks. They had to be cannibals because they found pot marks and scrapes on bones." All they have to do is be in the same group or write an email or write a letter, follow the narrative. Europeans are wiser, gentler, and less violent than you savages.
And someone in the chat is asking what's going on with the name. What are you guys holding back on the name?
On Namor? Namor is Roman backwards.
But that's due to the original comic book story.
But why is it Roman?
Because of the Plato, he's the one who wrote the idea of Atlantis, right? So it's back to that. But if you study Maya and even some Aztec philosophy, they also have this. They also speak of this old world with high civilization or high technical civilization that went underground or went underwater. So they also speak of it. They just don't call it Atlantis. So specifically Maya. That's why they tied it to the Maya, because they have their own stories. And if you look at Cuba, there's been some findings under Cuba that can look like structures of old, some kind of old big city. The reason it hasn't been looked into further because it's Cuba, and Cuba's like, fuck out of here. So that's the reason it hasn't really been researched deeply. And because what would it say if there is evidence that this underwater city is the original Atlantis, and this is the high technical civilization that Plato wrote of? How did he know about it? How, like, it would change a lot of things.
People who traveled, like the Moors did. Yeah, the Moors traveled everywhere. The Moors traveled everywhere. They were like gypsies. They traveled everywhere. They conquered Spain. They conquered Spain for a long time, and that's what brought the whites out of their caveman attitude. The Moors have a lot to do with history. That's why they know so much about it. I know, and I don't know a lot about the Moors, and nor do I want to, I'm not a cheerleader for the Moors. I'm not an enemy of the Moors. I just know that there has to come a time of intellectual talk.
Yes, and with that, I'll say this. A lot of people who have African, say they do a DNA test, and then they see 2% African, and they don't know why if they don't have Afro-Mexicanos in their family. It actually comes from the Spanish blood, because the Spanish blood was mixed by the Moors, because they were conquered by the Moors before they came. They were in deep turmoil. So that African DNA, most of the time, is coming from the Spanish rapists of colonization, not from direct African descent.
Absolutely.
So I do know that.
Let's get away from the fact that we want to prove where we came from because we don't know where we came from. That's the whole point of our science. The whole point of our philosophies and science.
But I think it's important. I think it's important not where we came from, but where we didn't come from. So I'll give you one theory that's a theory, but it's taken as fact 100% of the time, that we all came from Africa. That's a theory. That is still to this day a not proven theory. But people will take it as fact. So what happens when people say, well, you just happen to find, like Joe Rogan's argument. Joe Rogan says, oh, Native people feel entitled to this land because they found it first, because we all came from Africa. So that just means they found it first.
But see, we can't have a colonial argument about colonial names and colonial borders and then all of a sudden not be in the colonial mindset. We don't know anything about your borders. We never laid claim to this land. We claimed that we had a relationship with this land. We claimed that we understood this land. Our grandparents are buried on this land, but there's no ownership of this land, bro.
I agree with that part.
That's never changed from indigenous perspective, not even to this day. Not even to this day. So anybody who argues about genealogy and the origin of where we came from, we're not that wise yet. We're not that humble. You think those secrets would be given to somebody who studied in a institution paid for by rich oil oligarchs? They're not going to come up with their institutions weren't built on spirituality, the understanding of the cosmos, the intense observation of nature. That's not what these institutions say or do or even want. They think that's primitive. They think that isn't wise or doesn't have any knowledge, yet they're amazed on how the star aligns with the hole inside the pyramid. That takes mathematics, that takes observation, and that takes art. But art in a very different way. Art is a very different thing for us. Art
earlier you were speaking of books. Disney and Zero, let me ask you this. Earlier you were speaking of the movies that Disney has put out with the emotional
trauma,
distress that they cause.
Absolutely.
Right. So would you say that that's psychological warfare? Is that not the biggest weapon of the colonizer?
Yes.
Okay, so with that saying being a yes, let me then align these two ideologies with you. One, what is the psychological effect of people like me who came from Mexico and was told and conditioned to believe I am an illegal alien, not of this land? Okay, one, just pause there, right? And then two, I turn on the TV and I try to look for heroes, and all my heroes look white. And finally, we have a movie where I can look at Namor, which is only Namor or Namor to his enemies. He made that clear. Only to his enemies. To his people, he is Kukulkan. So now I can finally say, hell yeah, I can look up to this guy. He can be my hero.
But
hell
there
yeah,
has
no
to
more
be a
looking
buffer,
up to
though.
Thor.
But there can't be a veil in front of it, right? I don't know if you know about the smoky mirror. Do you know about the smoky mirror?
Yes, I know about the smoky mirror.
Okay, it's just smoke. You can put your hand through it. It's not real. The inner cosmos inside of you. The inner cosmos inside of you. Remember, we're watching a movie. And the pride,
I'm cognitively aware.
Now, the pride can't be coming from a movie. It has to be coming from you. I understand your psychology, where you're coming to a place and you're darker skin and the community around you isn't conscious enough to understand that you are of indigenous descent. And that was a renaissance that happened in 1994, where we all started taking pride of being our indigenous self. And it's been a few years since then, at least 20.
But I could see how so many people are proud of this movie. That's what I'm getting the sense of just recently. Am I right, Heron? Like, so many people are just so proud of the movie.
That's what I mean. It's a false pride. It's a pride that goes away.
I can't agree with that, Zero. I see where you're coming from Kukulkan in the comic movie. It's not real, according to our ancestors. I get that. And I think that whoever is taking it as real, then they have deeper issues. It would be like going to Disneyland and thinking that the Mickey Mouse that's walking around is the real Mickey Mouse from the cartoon. Then that person has bigger issues. I would also think that if someone was to attach themselves to a movie character, any movie, and you attach yourself to that movie character, then they have deeper issues. What I'm talking about is simply representation of not only culturally, but skin tone. Because we don't get skin tone representation as darker, even within Latino America or within indigenous people. We just don't get it. Right. It's not there.
Because you live in a racist, very Nazi-like country.
But Heron, you are saying that ultimately you had another point that Marvel did they do a good job displaying the character as in the comics?
I'm sorry, what's the last part to your question?
Like, do you think they did a good portrayal of the character based on the comic book?
Okay, so based on the comics, they changed the whole identity of Namor, but they stayed true to the characteristics. He's this guy who will do anything for his people. His people come first. End of story. He will kill anybody he needs to kill. Just like in the movie, he kills somebody of very important status. That's Namor. He gives F, of who he has to align with. He has aligned with, in the comic book, with the biggest villains, like the one that just, the whole Marvel people had to come together, the Avengers had to come together to end him in Endgame. I forgot his name, but the big evil guy. He's been friends with him. He's been friends with whoever, as long as his people is safe. And I think that mentality is very much the mentality of Pancho Villa, the mentality of Che Guevara, the mentality of Fidel Castro, the mentality of Malcolm X, under any means necessary. And so I don't see him as an enemy or a villain. He is an anti-hero to white people. So he's a hero to his people. And now that his cultural identity has been changed to represent us, I feel proud in that. And I feel proud that, an indigenous actor who Mexico tried to bury, remember this, Mexico tried to bury him. Now he has a bigger platform than most Mexican actors, excluding Diego Luna and Gael Garcia, who actually gave him his first opportunity. Those two actors co-sponsored him. He wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those two actors. So now you have another actor that is at their level now who can keep opening doors for more actors that would have never had that chance if they don't come from an elite status of class in Mexico.
So, okay, look, you're proud of the fact that Marvel used a crazy name.
I can't give Marvel credit. It's Coogler. So Coogler.
But Marvel funded it. Marvel funded it. Marvel funded it.
Marvel funded
it. You can't. You have to give them credit.
Marvel.
It's their fucking stamp. It says it on the first thing you see is that. So it comes from there. It's like we can't minimize that. It's their version. It's their version of what they feel is this. Okay, but let's get back to the inspiration part, right? Or the pride, right? Your pride. Yeah. You're proudful of that.
Another thing I want to bring up at the movie, just because you were speaking of how they didn't cast, they didn't go directly with indigenous people. They did about the language, so they use Maya language, right? Mm-hmm. Not Mayan, because that's white people's thing. Maya language. The guy they casted for the Maya language, he's a true Maya speaker, fluent speaker, and I just heard in an interview from the director that he would go check them again and again. Like, nope, that scene is not good yet. Nope, the sound's not good. Nope, the language is not good. And he would have them redo the scenes over and over again until he felt that they were doing justice to the language and that he made it clear to the producers, the director, the cast, that it was very, very, very important that they didn't butcher up the language. Because this is the first time that, worldwide, people are going to hear the language.
I just think that we settle for so little. We settle for so little, bro. It's like, that's not enough.
But look, Zero.
Like, I get it.
But Zero,
I get it. We can't scrape at it and go, but look, they used the Mayan. One Mayan guy who knew his shit about Maya went there and fucking was arguing with them about doing the scene right, and we settle for so fucking little, bro. That's like,
was there any consultants, like Mayan consultants, or
there was. I'm sure there was tons of them, and
not only
everybody
that,
and whatever was kosher for the people that were in charge, they let that happen. But let's get back to the inspiration part, right? And if anybody wants to give their inspiring story from watching this movie, they should call or put it into the chat. But okay, so you're inspired by Namor because you know him as Namor since you do the comic book research and and you don't feel
I'm
that,
inspired.
and you don't feel that, and
correct,
you don't. But wait, you don't feel that Namor, if you put it in front of a mirror, says Roman. Right?
Oh, I want to clarify that. I'm not inspired by Namor. I was never a big fan of Namor.
Okay.
I'm a fan of Tenoch Huerta.
Okay.
So when he took the role, when I first heard of the rumors, I jumped on it. Like, I did all my research. I wanted this guy to already have his franchise, but I understand they have to introduce him in a movie so it can make sense. See how profitable and how successful that appearance is, and then they give him a solo movie. They did the same thing with Black Panther. Black Panther didn't have a solo movie starting off. He was introduced in Captain America Civil War, and black people went nuts over him, and they're like, oh yeah, we have an audience. Okay, let's make a movie. The same thing should be done for Tenoch Huerta, because now that people are receiving him in good grace, now that Marvel's like, okay, they are breaking records. The movie came in second highest earning movie in the year, second to Doctor Strange, which is another Marvel movie. It beat the shit out of the DC movie that The Rock just premiered in last month, which is Black Adam. It beat the shit out of that movie. Mm-hmm. So hopefully, very soon, Tenoch Huerta, because he's 41 years old, so he's not that young, they start giving him his solo movies. This creates bigger opportunities for more indigenous representation, bigger platform for
I'm not
for
sure.
directors, producers.
I'm not sure. Like, I get it. Like, you want to be represented in Hollywood, which has, blatantly been racist ever since their inception.
He was dope in Narcos, though, right? Head-on, he was sucking.
He's a great actor.
Dope.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he's not a good actor. But okay, but let's just say though, you said you felt pride about Quetzalcoatl, right? Well, not Quetzalcoatl, but Kukulkan, right? Because they didn't use Quetzalcoatl but that's who they were describing, right? And so you felt proud. What part of the pride inspired you to do something that Quetzalcoatl was known to do? Hello?
Okay, that's a good question. As far as Quetzalcoatl, I don't see...
Kukulkan.
Or even Kukulkan. And I have been to Chichen Itza, and it's a beautiful place to be. And that, that's why I have it as my profile picture, because to the white people, it's one of the 7 wonders of the world. And I can see why. The way I look at it is, even though I don't come from that lineage, and, you said in the 90s, 94, there was this awakening consciousness of indigeneity within the Chicanismo movement, which is also harmful because a lot of people thought, oh, you're Mexican, so therefore you're ethnic. And that created a lot of indigenous erasure of who your actual lineage is. So then I had to do my homework.
But wait, when we get into conversation of who your actual lineage is, you have to go to a European stamped, approved institution to figure that out. 94. No, I understand. You could ask your mom, you can ask your dad, and they'll have a distorted version of it. But remember, Heron, we were displaced, murdered, raped, land theft, trafficked.
I understand that.
You don't get any. What you are is you are detribalized, displaced, native.
I'm not detribalized. I'm not, because I've learned what the actual definition of detribalized means. Detribalized means that you actually belong to a tribe, and you were outcasted by that tribe because you did some fucked up shit. I didn't do that, so therefore I'm not detribalized.
For me, detribalized means that you can't use your tribe, you can't use your language, you can't do your ceremonies, you can't use your clothes.
That is simply displaced. That is displaced from your
detribalized. Displaced, detribalized, we're survivors of genocide, and there is no clear road back home other than how you implement what you know. That's why I was asking you that question. It was a curveball, because I do respect everything you're saying. I do respect everything you're saying, Heron. Don't get me wrong, bro. I'm not bashing you. I hope I don't seem that way.
No, I don't. No,
and I want to make it clear to the LA native audience. I'm not trying to set anybody up, but what I'm trying to do is, when I read the stories of Quetzalcoatl, I try to do something that he I'm not saying that I did that. I just got inspired by it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when I remember being a kid and watching the Rocky movies, and after the Rocky movies, I would do push-ups in the room. And
so this movie didn't inspire you in any way,
absolutely
shape,
not. I didn't
form.
have any inspiration about Quetzalcoatl.
Did it inspire your son though?
No, my little boy, he didn't care. He just didn't care. He was just like,
but I'll
Wakanda
tell you how I
forever, whatever.
Let me tell you how I do connect it to Quetzalcoatl, because I was getting this.
Okay.
So when I did my homework and I found out that I come from Zacateco territory and I come from the Zacateco people, and then I went to those 3 archaeological sites, and one of them, which is called Alta Vista Tzatzalhuites, I found out that in the year 700, which was the prime year of their civilization, it ended at year 900. So it was 200 years before that where they were at their prime. And they found these, I guess, dishes that they used to use. And in one of the dishes, it had Quetzalcoatl going around the dish. So then that tells me Quetzalcoatl, we knew, my people knew about Quetzalcoatl before Tenochtitlan. So also I found out that we have the original image of the eagle with the serpent. We have the original one of the oldest ones, if not the oldest. And it doesn't have the nopal, it doesn't have the cactus, it just has the eagle with the serpent. And so then that lets me know.
Well, I gotta correct you. I gotta correct you right there, Heron. And it's not a debate, but it's so that we can be clear. The eagle does not hold the serpent. The eagle holds the representation of fire and water. And what does that mean? Fire and water is. Have you ever been outside in a cold night and breathed in the air? You see a smoke, right? Like it looks like smoke or vapor, right? That's fire and water. The eagle was in the morning dusk or dawn breathing fire and water. It was not a serpent.
I can be, I don't know what if it is or not, but the image was found there, and it dated. So that civilization of Tzatzalhuites, it goes from the year 100 to the year 900. Their prime
according to Roman calculation or Roman time.
According to the archaeologists that study that area from Chicago.
But they're going before Christ, right? They're going before Christ, BC, AD.
No, this is AD. So the year AD 100 to the year 900 AD after death.
So see.
Yeah, so this is a few hundred years before.
Like it's crazy they get to dictate.
That's crazy, huh?
But what I don't like about Roman timelines is that they get to dictate when year 1 was, based on Christian Roman understanding,
and
because that's the death of Christ.
And I would think writings.
That's the death of Christ, right? Head on. Year 1 is the death of Christ.
Well, in the archaeological world,
that's what I'm trying to point out about this movie.
Era.
So what I'm trying to point out in the movie is that we have a huge void of time. Huge void of time. We're not talking 50 years. We're not talking 20 years. We're talking thousands of years of time that's voided. And then we reference, these archaeological finds based on Roman timekeeping. We don't know how old they are, is what I'm saying, because we don't know how old we are.
I can agree with that.
So that's where I'm coming from, is that we don't know how old we are. And that's what I liked about that movie. Do you remember the part in the movie where they go, he's older than you, right? The person in the movie goes, he's older than you. And I think they were referencing like how old, like he's really old, not like he's just not 50 years older than you or 100 years older than you. He's really old. And I think that's a general sense of saying that ancient Mesoamerican culture, and I only use those words because that's the way they recognize us, people who are in institutions, that's who they are. is that they reference our cultures, but the truth is that we have our own version of our land. And you referenced Plato, right? You said Plato wrote of Atlantis, right?
Yeah.
But how would he even get to the story of Atlantis, right? According to Plato, Atlantis was surrounded by water, right?
Yeah.
It's a land mass surrounded by water, right? Right?
Yeah.
It's called a continent, right? That's what Daniel pointed out last time he was on. He said a landmass surrounded by water is a continent.
Yeah.
Plato is referencing a landmass surrounded by water. He's describing Turtle Island, in my opinion. Why would he tell us? Why would Europeans tell us that we're in the most advanced land, progressive technology, spirituality? Do you know how many temples are on this land mass? Do you know how many temples?
Many.
Many. Do you know how many?
I don't know the number, but I know it's many.
Well, I read a book called The Secrets of the Maya Science and Religion, read by Humbat's Men. And he says there's 21,000 pyramids on this landmass. How many have we found? We have to challenge the white narrative. And when I mean white is the perspective that one race had all the answers and had all the navigation and had all these things. There has to come a time where we go, dude, this does not sound right. And we have an ability, just because I didn't go to Harvard or Oxford, I can go toe-to-toe with anyone. Because I understood one thing. I don't know if you know about this, Heron, but they did a scientific experiment on one drop of blood. Have you heard about this?
No.
Okay. They did an experiment, science, European science did an experiment on one drop of blood. Have you heard about this, Armando?
No.
Okay. So this one individual, I forgot his name, he's an African American and he's into quantum physics and he's into really deep esoteric wisdom. He said that in the drop of blood, they were able to put that onto some sort of mechanism, and they found out that plasma can hold data. And so they downloaded 70,000 copies of a book into that drop of blood. 70,000 copies.
Wow.
So that means that blood holds information. And we aren't the all-knowing, all-wise civilization that figured out computers, because we were into different things. We were into math, frequency, and experience. What do I mean by that? Meaning they knew how to code the blood without computers, because the blood holds infinite information. We don't know how old we are. And our symbols represent thousands of years of observation. That's why I cannot concede to Namor or a Marvel.
If I
rendition.
may, what is your biggest argument with the movie?
I don't like the name Namor.
Biggest argument.
I don't like the name Namor. I hate that name.
But they have to use a name that comes from the comic book that associates with Wakanda.
Then don't use it. Then don't use him. Use Namor. Use Namor, the comic book guy. Don't associate him. But don't associate him with a philosophy, a discipline.
If I may, Zero, then you're just creating more jobs for more white colonizers.
Cool.
Because they're getting paid for those roles.
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with them dominating a racist institution that has never been inclusive. I'm cool with that. Why would I get upset at that? That's not something I should be upset about. They're racist, bro. They've always been racist. And what, do you think just because one squeezes in that the racism is over? What happened with Obama? We thought the black president, Nothing's going to happen that's racist. I dare something racist happen right now. And who was the biggest deporter of indigenous people? Obama. We can't be manipulated like this. This is where critical thinking comes into play. This is what LA Natives is all about. I'm not saying to diss Wakanda and to get into arguments with Africans and to set
Okay.
people up. But what I'm
Uh,
saying is, if you're gonna get inspired by Quetzalcoatl, do the research and implement something that he stood for, that you connected with, that you resonated with, because Quetzalcoatl is a great philosophy to follow.
But I think that's where the smoke is, or the disconnect is. You're taking it at literal value of Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan. I'm not taking it at literal value because I know it's not literal. I know it's not real life. It's a comic book fiction story that, in my opinion, I am grateful that they gave it to someone like Tenoch Huerta and twisted the whole
Grateful? I wouldn't say
identity.
that. I wouldn't put grateful into it. I wouldn't be
I
grateful.
am grateful.
Oh.
I am. Because, again, not only is Latino representation at its lowest compared to every other identity, within Latino representation, you only get white Latinos. So then that puts dark indigenous phenotype looking Latinos like Tenoch Huerta, who identifies as a reconnecting indigenous person and decolonizing. It gives him a 0% chance to ever have a platform. So this movie gave it to him. It said, "Here you go," and your own country won't do it.
But we got to remember, though, we got to remember what's happening to Kanye West. They gave him a platform, and the minute he started talking shit, like real shit, not like little shit, like real shit. Like, I was in a meeting with very high executives in the fashion industry, and they told me that this and that and the other. Those are real conversations, right? It's we can't get caught up in the civil rights, black, what was it, Black Lives Matter movement. Like, these are propaganda things that see, like, what really happened out of Black Lives Matter. I already kind of knew it is like it was going to fizzle out, and that there's no real change in the communities that they come from. That we can't get prideful about those things. We need to really just look into the inner verse that we have, because we're complex beings. You know how you're prideful about this Namor character from Marvel, and he's flying in the air and he's living in an underground or an underwater paradise made of temples, and that's infinite imaginations that you can have, that you can write, that you can dream and live in the dream world. It's kind of like saying like this, the way I look at it, and it's not literal. I'm not saying, oh my God, I'm just saying, let's say, for instance, I wrote a movie about somebody's grandmother or grandfather, better, because this character is a male. And I said, oh yeah, he's a fucking rapist, drunk, snorts coke, but it's not real. It's not a fiction. I know he was a good person. Don't trip. I don't think that that's something that you should use. When you use Kukulkan, don't wipe your ass with it. Revere it. Go deep into it. It's a dope story to follow. Use your critical thinking. Wait, I'm addressing the LA natives. Hold up. I'm addressing LA natives. Okay. Just go deep into those philosophies, man. Remember, one drop of blood holds trillions of information. So then what does your whole body full of blood do? Go ahead, Heron. Sorry about that.
I think, based on critical thinking, so I'm a huge advocate of critical thinking. We're looking at it from also the perspective of our age, right? From your age and my age. If we look at it from how kids today, they react to a lot of these movies that Disney does put out, and they want to dress up, as the Avengers. come Halloween. They want to dress up and then they want to keep on that costume all year long. So they want to feel like superheroes. And who are they wearing? They're wearing Captain America, who's a white guy. They're wearing Iron Man, who's a white guy. They're wearing Spider-Man, who's a white boy. Not the other versions, which there are other versions of Spider-Man. There's a Puerto Rican, Morales, who's Puerto Rican. But they don't really, put him on the movies. They have a cartoon of him. There's a Mexican one. He's a Spider-Man, I think, year 2099. So they don't use him. So when kids are dressing up as their favorite superhero, they have Hawkeye, Thor, more white guys, Black Widow, white girl, Captain Marvel, white girl.
Batman, white guy, right?
Yeah, white guy. Superman, and the list goes on. Aquaman, yeah, he's somewhat indigenous because he has Polynesian in him. And by the way, talking back about history, who were the first to travel who and who were the first to find who? There's actual DNA evidence that South America and Polynesians actually mixed way before Columbus. So they just don't know if it was Polynesians who found South America or was it South America that traveled into Polynesia Island. They don't know where, who came
and
to
they'll
who.
Never know.
I hear where you're going.
And they'll never know, bro. They'll never know. They're not the fucking best at anything.
And I hope.
And they're big, fat fucking liars.
And I hope this movie does inspire a lot of Latino, indigenous kids to wear his costume for Halloween. But are a whole bunch of white kids going to wear his costume for Halloween?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Roman.
I have a problem. Look, I'll tell you what.
It's a Roman.
I've gone at it with cosplayers. I don't know if you know what cosplay is, like grown up dressing up as their favorite superhero, which I think is kind of weird. But there's these people out there, right? And they cosplay. So I've gone at it with some white guys who have now adopted the new Ku Klux Klan Namor, and they dress up as them. And I'm like,
why though? Why do you have an issue with that?
Because finally, indigenous have a representation, right?
But
and
they shouldn't use it. They don't have a right to use it. They don't have a right to be inspired.
Morally, they shouldn't, because again, they have so many to choose from. But what allows them to choose this indigenous character? Their money, their entitlement, their privilege. When there could be millions in Yucatan that would love to dress up as Namor, but they don't have the economical means to do it. So these assholes over here are fucking playing superhero at 30 years old, 40 years old, So they should, if they want to, and then they say, oh, it's because I love the character, or I love the culture, then donate that shit. Donate it to an indigenous person who actually looks like Tenoch Huerta and give it to them so they can dress up as their new character. I think that's the problem, that people don't even look into who Tenoch Huerta is. All he does is speak about blanquitud, how harmful Latinidad is, how racist it is, how racist white people have been for 500 years. And I love that Coogler allowed him to speak his heart in the movie, because there's a part right now that's been controversial with white people, that they feel disrespected by Namor, because there's a line where he says, yes, we were conquered by these colonizers who brought their I forgot exactly how he said it, harmful language, their religion, and erased us. So they're like, oh, now even the Spanish people, you're calling Spanish a hateful language? Yes, it's hateful, because from that hateful language, they use terms like chinga tu madre, hijo de la gran puta, which were terms given to indigenous women who were raped by the colonizers and then had kids that the colonizers didn't want to accept. And now we grew up calling each other that, not knowing the history of it. So it's a very hateful language. Calling us indios, meaning that we're sin Dios, just like Namor is el niño sin amor. Indios is sin Dios. We have no God, because we didn't believe in Jesus Christ. So there's a lot of things to decode. Now, for a little kid to finally look at the big screen and see himself as a potential superhero, and then look at the other white kids like, okay, you be Captain America, I'm gonna be Namor. Just like when I was young and I would try to pick the red, the Power Rangers. And I would pick the red one because he was a brown kid. I wouldn't pick the black one because I'm not black, obviously. I wouldn't pick the blue one because I'm not white. But in Power Rangers, there was a brown kid, and I would pick him. But when it came to a lot of other things, I couldn't find someone to pick. In the X-Men, the only one I kind of resonated with was Gambit, because Gambit was of a little bit darker complexion, and he was the outsider. He was from New Orleans, so he comes from a lot of mixes in his blood. But he was an indigenous. We didn't have an indigenous representation when I was growing up. So now that we finally do, hell yeah, I'm proud in that. And specifically who the actor is. It's not just some white Latino privileged asshole that has the money and the lineage to put him in actor school. It's somebody who broke through the barriers, somebody who speaks. Do you know that in Mexico, there's already murals popping up everywhere for Tenoch Huerta as Namor, because he is the people's champion? Even 2 blocks away from your store, Malinali, there's a mural by a local muralist, a Chicana muralist, who was paid by Black Panther movie franchise to do a mural to advocate or advertise the movie. These are the changes that we need in our community. This is the hope that we need.
Well, I hope that they research that a 10-year-old kid who did get inspired by. I remember one time my son came to me running. He was about 11, and his name was Sholo. And he's all, Dad, I just looked on. I Googled my name. How come you didn't tell me I was the god of the underworld? Or that, and I go, you're not the god of the underworld, you're the guy in the underworld. The guide is a dog, right? I hope that this movie inspires people to ask young children of indigenous displacement to go deep into what and who is Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan. That they don't get lost in translation or confused with Namor, which is backwards for Roman. Because those are important details, bro. That's all I'm pointing out. We can't get happy that someone decides to still rape our culture, because they're dictating what it is and what it isn't. And it shouldn't be a movie that you should be inspired about that with. You should be a conversation between an uncle and a nephew, a father and a son, a mentor to a group. Like, I get it. Like, we want to have a superhero to kind of cling to, but if we're looking to superheroes who are fictitious, then we're not living in reality.
But now in the mainstream, right, Heron, he's a villain, right?
No, he's an anti-hero.
Anti-hero.
So,
but the headlines, but the headlines and all the news reporting that's going on, from what I've seen, from what I've seen, they're labeling him as a villain.
Yeah.
Yes, because white people were really pissed off. Look, Zero. This is how important it is that he is being represented by Tenoch Huerta. White people have been campaigning on YouTube, on Twitter, everywhere, that Marvel is trash for changing the cultural identity, that Marvel is trash for allowing Coogler, the director, to do whatever he wants with Namor, that they have disrespected the image of their, delight in beloved Namor by giving him this Mesoamerican identity. And what a trash actor to choose as Tenoch Huerta. They're bashing the shit out of it because they see what is being done. They see the turnaround. They're calling it this new movement of having indigenous representation in Black Panther, forced inclusion. Forced inclusion. That's what they're calling it. That it's forcing it down their throats because they're pissed that in the movie they hear white people and they hear colonizers right after. The movie drops the word colonizer more times than the first one did. The first one only says it one time, and this one I think I counted 4 times, which is empowering as hell. Now we look at white people, and thanks to a mainstream movie, we could say, hey, colonizer, because that's what they are. That's what they have been. And I don't call all of them colonizers because that would be giving them too much credit, because a colonizer put in work. The rest of them, they're colonists. meaning they're just surviving and benefiting from the colonization of their ancestors, the true colonizers, the ones that put in work to colonize. So a colonizer, to me, is one that actually did some atrocious acts. So the rest are either colonists, they're settlers, occupiers, squatters, or orphans because they have no motherland. That's the identity that I see in them. So when it comes to psychological warfare, if you keep putting all these Anglo-white actors as superheroes, brown little kids like me grew up thinking you're never going to be a superhero. You're never going to be someone that speaks up for your people. You're never going to be that because there is none of that in the movies and the cartoons and the shows that you watch. It does something to your psychological development. When you see people that look like you are only casted to be cholos, bank robbers, rapists, the bad people, the help, the gardener, the elevator guy, the taxi guy, then you think that that's all your worth, that that's your value, that that's what life has already put forward towards you. But when you finally see someone like Tenoch Huerta, who looks like you, speaks like you, thinks like you, and has broken barriers and says, fuck it, even if my career's on the line, I'm going to speak my truth. And then his truth gave him a position where he is now, then you say, fuck yeah, I'm going to keep speaking my truth. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I see that it can break through.
So then if there
and
was
gives
no...
me hope for the,
if there
that
was,
gives me hope for the next generation of kids. That's why.
I mean, I rather it be something different, though. You know, I mean, as good as movies are, it's just not something that I want to, like, I wouldn't go, oh, okay. Like, I wouldn't take my grandson to watch this. Like, son, we're going to watch this movie. You know, grandson, we're going to watch this movie and we're going to break down Quetzalcoatl, you know, or no. Quetzalcoatl are intimate conversations at sunrise before the sun comes up and you see the morning star and you connect with that geometry that it makes in the sky. You understand that it carries a spirit. Whatever that spirit is, it's there. Those are
Would
deep.
you hold the same argument?
Those are deep. Those are deep, intimate understandings. I get it. Like, if you want to, you know, be Halloween costume guy with the Namor costume, right? I get it. But
no, that's not what I said. I don't dress up as in Halloween.
No, I'm not saying that you are. I'm not
yeah.
even. I didn't suggest. I'll make sure that everybody's clear that I wasn't saying that was you. I'm just saying in general. Like,
yeah, but
like it's going to inspire costumes, you know.
Now look, this.
I understand the intimacy, but would you have the same argument for the video game Mictlan, which is being done and produced by all Mexican producing cast and producing video gamers? I don't know if you know about the video game Mictlan.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
So look into that. But
yeah,
that's a video game, and it's based in Aztec and Maya mythology.
Cool.
Look at how explosive this episode is. The chat is on fire. People are tuning in. It's a 2-hour convo about this movie. I didn't know this movie was so impactful, and we could go on multiple episodes making this movie a topic. And I don't know, from the outside looking in, I see Heron's perspective, but then I definitely hear Zero's perspective, you know, because
I'm taking it as a movie, like
it's Marvel at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's not,
and it's owned by Disney, and ultimately they're gonna make me buy that ticket tomorrow to go watch the movie.
Watch it. I mean, it's something to kind of like. I get it, like,
but like,
wow, this is the first time that.
But like your wife,
a Mesoamerican figure.
But you said your wife went up to you like, yo, it's a very important movie. We need to watch it.
Yeah, she was confused about, you know, and I have to say something about my wife, my partner. Today's her birthday.
Happy birthday, Jenny.
Happy birthday, Jenny. Shout out to
happy
Jenny.
Birthday.
Yes. And she's a dedicated person, and she's doing her work right now. And that's why I'm able to do the podcast today. Because if not, you know, I wouldn't be here. I would, you know, would be with my partner during her special day. But she's a dedicated worker, so shout out to Jenny. But she told me after the movie that I had to go see it, and that, you know, and she wanted me to pick it apart, and I didn't really have that kind of attitude towards it. I'm not picking it apart. I didn't like the representation of it. I didn't feel like that Quetzalcoatl was exiled to the ocean. It's just not something that it wasn't like I don't know. I just didn't feel like it was something inspiring for me.
So we are gonna wrap it up, head on. But I want you to, for all of our listeners, everyone paying attention, what are your last words regarding this movie and your overall perspective? Go ahead.
That we also have Quetzalcoatl to look forward to in the comic book movies, because Quetzalcoatl is another different god. It's not Namor. That's why they named him Kukulkan. But if you watch Thor, Love and Thunder, there's actually, he goes to the meeting of the gods where Zeus is like the biggest god. And there's all these gods sitting around. One of them is Quetzalcoatl, and he's sitting down. And he has his whole, Aztec reference clothing and everything. So we don't know what Quetzalcoatl is potentials are, or what he's, what are his powers.
Yeah,
but we know that there's
I wouldn't. But see, this is the problem that I have with like stuff like that. Like, I don't believe that Roman culture was older than Toltec, Olmec, or Mayan or Aztec culture. I don't believe in that. If they were sitting down, fucking Zeus would be the one sitting down, not Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl.
I agree with you. I mean,
like,
I
don't want to take crumbs, man. I don't want to be the fucking Mexican fucking, what do they used to call affirmative action Marvel movie where Quetzalcoatl gets in the seat, gets to sit in the round table of Zeus, while Zeus is the fucking knower of everything and giver of everything, and I'm cool with that, man.
So you don't want to be tokenized. That's the term.
Yeah, dude. I think. Look, I'll have my thoughts with it, but go ahead and finish yours, head on. I appreciate you coming on, bro. I love you, bro, and thank you for sharing your opinion. I understand how you feel about the movie, and I hope I didn't offend you in any way. I'm not trying to set you up.
No offense. All love.
Yeah,
all love.
Just
I
know
love
that.
Having,
know that I respect you and I respect your opinion, and that's why you're on LA Natives. So
go ahead and close out.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. I'm gonna close out with the term that Tenoch Huerta has been repeating in all his interviews. And his message, or they ask him, "What is your message to the kids, specifically to the kids watching?" And he says, "I want to know, and I want them to know that specifically, I think he's speaking to the brown indigenous phenotype kids, to feel proud when you see your reflection in the mirror, to feel love, and to know that there's nothing wrong with you, and there never was anything wrong with you. The only wrong was the eyes who were looking at you and judged you. That's what was wrong, the hate in their eyes, not you." And I think that's powerful to have a celebrity who's leading right now in the biggest film to be saying that in every interview, for all the brown kids who felt some type of way because their skin told them that they were less up. And now they have their hero telling them that's not true, to love themselves. That's my closing statement.
Dope. That's dope, Heron.
Dope. Thanks for coming on, brother. I appreciate
you.
Thank you.
So, Zero, any last words?
Like I said, this is just a movie. And before we used to get all fired up, I remember being young and younger and getting fired up about Apocalypto and writing a protest song about it, and just getting wrapped up in the emotion of someone else representing our culture. And I don't feel any different from that time. I don't think Disney knows how to represent anybody's culture, and don't take this as historical fact or get inspired to do the research of who said Quetzalcoatl was. He was someone who came to communities, from what I hear and from what I've learned, and brought different perspectives. it's not, this individual would not be caught up in murdering or killing. Like it just wouldn't, I don't feel that that's what it was. And maybe I'm romanticizing my culture, because in my heart, that's what it was. And let me romanticize about it. Is it accurate? I don't know. One day I will, when I have that conversation with the right elder who corrects me. Because the thing about your path as a displaced, detribalized native is the long journey back home and all the people you get to meet in that journey. And I've talked to many people about who and what this energy is. And some of it has been positive, some of it has been distorted. It's my own inner self, my own inner universe that I really rely on, and I put pieces of the puzzle together. But I saw a few things in this movie that were really interesting to me when you study beyond 1492. So stay critical. If you do watch the movie, watch it with a critical mind. Understand and do the research of who Quetzalcoatl was, who Kukulkan was, what does Kukulkan represent? And you'll find that it's way different than what Marvel has put in front of your eyes to go into your brain and affect your heart. You are all infinite, wise, beautiful, original inhabitants of Turtle Island. Use that wisdom to find your way back home. We'll see you next Wednesday. La Sucamatli, Umeteo, Donansin, Donato.